Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off, and we finished with all the different categories for phonological teaching with an adult learner. The second half of phonological teaching will be syllabication. If you'll go into your handout and go towards the back of it, you'll have a couple of pages back there. One starts with the definition of a syllable. So why don't you go to that part of your handout, and you have a couple of pages in there that are marked with a 5 and a 7. Pull those out and lay them in front of you, and that's how we'll work through syllabication. While you're putting your stuff together, I'm going to remind you again that those of you that are maybe working with an adult learner that starts with you at about a 5th or a 6th grade level, you could do a very quick review of the phonology categories and then move right into syllabication. Syllabication and vocabulary growth and development go hand in hand. It's very difficult to teach good vocabulary skills if your client does not have a handle on how to recognize different types of syllables and to how to syllabatize a word. So remember those two things as we get started. Okay, let's talk about what a syllable is. Now, even though you may have clients that are beginning readers, in other words, basically, according to the definition, they are either illiterate, non-functioning, starting with the basic sounds of our consonants and trying to learn short and long vowels. They understand auditorily. They hear, obviously, words. They have some sight vocabulary because they're functioning either at work or in their families or at the grocery store, filling out credit reports, those types of things. So they hear words, and they hear words in their parts. And that's where I start with adults. I tell adults words have as many parts to them as we can hear the vowels inside of those. To make that a little simpler, I will start with, you can't have a word without a vowel in it. In other words, if you just had a language that was built on only the consonants, there would be no vocabulary. There would be no words. That's why I say those 5 vowels with the extra one, the Y, the A, E, I, O, and U, they are the hardest working part of our language. They are the backbone or the structure of the English language. That's why it's so important, and you may spend your whole first year working on short vowels and your second year working on long vowels, but how vowels work inside words helps us to decide how many syllables are going to be in a word. So let's back up again and think about what we mean by a syllable. So if I know that I can't have a word without a vowel, then the definition of a syllable is it's either a part or a word that has at least, and this is the critical part, has at least one vowel that you can hear. Now, you and I have been through long vowels, short vowels, and silent vowels. So when I talk about a syllable is a part of a word or a word that has at least one vowel that you can hear, that eliminates one whole category. That means the vowels that you can't hear do not or probably won't constitute a part of a word or a syllable in a word. So if a word has one vowel that you can hear, say the word cat, that's one part or one syllable because it has one vowel that you can hear. If I take the word cat and then make it cake, like this, we've talked about this in the first part of our lesson. All right, this we know is a silent E. So we still only have one vowel that you can hear. So connecting that to my definition of what a syllable is, a syllable can be either a part or a word with at least one vowel that you can hear. So if I just listen phonemically to this word, cake, that's silent. Because that's silent, it makes that vowel say its name or make it long. If I take the word cat, that is a consonant vowel consonant word. It's a short vowel. I have one syllable word. So that if I take that to the next level of a definition of a vowel and words and syllabication, that means that a word will have as many parts as it has vowels that you can hear. So I can take a word like cat and turn it into, that's one part, and it is a word, but then I can turn it into a word like catastrophic. Well, that's catastrophic. That's 4 parts because I can hear 4 vowels that make sound in that particular word, catastrophic. It has 4 parts, therefore it has to have at least how many? 4 vowels that you can hear. All right, that's the basic of what a syllable is. The tricky part about syllabication is, and actually once you learn this process, it really becomes very easy, and older clients actually like to do this process. First thing we're going to learn are the 7 different types of syllables that there are. And you've got a page in front of you that's got the number 7 on it. So let me list them on the board for you and tell you a little bit about each one. Some you already know about. We went through them in phonology. But I'm going to put them up on the board, and I want you to list them on your page that has the 7 different types. This is consistent all over our language, and it is one of the key components of the structure of the English language. All right, the first type, these are our types of syllables. The first type of syllable that we have is what's called closed. A closed syllable, and that's like the word at. And it's closed in by what? It's closed in by a consonant. This is going to be a short vowel. So you mark it with its diacritical mark. So the first type of syllable you have is closed. The reason we figure out what type of syllable it is because then it tells you how it's pronounced. Once you know how a syllable or a part is pronounced, you can start putting all those parts together. Voila, you get a big word. That's called vocabulary. All right, so the first one is called a closed. Opposite of that is called an open syllable. And that's a syllable, for example, like the word high. So if you have a part of a word or a syllable that ends in a vowel, that's called an open syllable, and that will get a long vowel sound. Long vowel, short vowel. That's the diacritical mark for those sounds. So we've got the first 2 types. Closed syllable is closed in by a consonant. It'll be short. An open syllable hangs out at the end by itself. Therefore, it's going to be a long sound. The third type of syllable is what we call this. Remember from yesterday, or the early part of this, whenever you see a dash, it means it comes at the end of a word. At the end of a word. So we have consonant L-E. And here's where in our English language, and I know you're going to have a second video that talks about phonology, and we remember yesterday we talked about, some people talk about 44 sounds in the English language, some people talk about 42 sounds in the English language. Here's one of those oddity sounds. And this is the sound of this little figure. And I'm going to put it over here because it represents its diacritical mark. And that is what we call a schwa. That's a schwa. That's the symbol for schwa. You'll see it in a dictionary. I'll give you an example of the word. If you take the word little, write this word down. And here it goes. At the end of a word, consonant L-E. Right there is where the schwa lives. Right here is where the schwa lives. It is a sound. Remember yesterday I told you when you see a symbol like that, 2 lines like this next to a letter, it means you're supposed to produce the sound that's inside those. So the sound of schwa is So if you say slowly in your mind the word litta, there it is. That's the sound. It's right there, and it's called the schwa. Litta. Little. But if you slow it down, you'll hear it. We don't print that sound inside the letter, but that sound exists, and that makes some of us that believe there are 44 sounds in our language, there's an additional sound. For example, the word apple, you'll hear it again. So if you say it slowly, you'll hear this sound right in here between the consonant L-E. Between that consonant L-E, little. Now, I will tell you, I want you to write these down, and I'll put them over here on the board. There are 9 of these. There are only 9 in our language, and I'm going to list them over here for you, and that's what we call the schwa sound. Here are the 9 of the ending schwa sounds, and they all start with a dash because it lets you know it comes at the end of the word. We know it's going to be a type of a syllable, all right? The first one is K-L-E. Another one is D-L-E, G-L-E, B-L-E, C-L-E, P-L-E, F-L-E, Z-L-E, and T-L-E. All of these represent the schwa sound, and you find it here, here. It's right between the initial consonant and right before the L-E, and it's all the sound of the schwa All right, it's a type of a syllable. It's the third type of a syllable. So anytime you see a word that ends in consonant L-E, you know there's going to be an additional sound right there. All right? All right, the fourth type, let me move this down a little so we get some more space. The fourth type of syllable is what we call the controlled R. Remember, we talked about that yesterday. There's an A-R, E-R, O-R, I-R, and a U-R. And remember, we said what happens in an R-control vowel is that the R controls the sound. So you won't necessarily hear, I'm doing this kind of, instead of completely blocking it out, I'm doing that sound. Instead of completely drawing the line through it, it says it's completely silent. The R controls it. For example, like the word car, her, tort, firm, and fur. You don't actually hear the A, E, I, O, or U. What you hear is the control of the R sound. So the fourth type of a syllable is what we call R controlled, and that's its diacritical mark. Now, why am I reminding you each time to remember its diacritical mark is because when we go to mark a word and mark its syllables, you're going to have to know those diacritical marks. When we go to underline vowels in a word, you need to underline both of the letters in this combination because the vowel influences that R, but the R controls the sound. All right, the fifth one is what we call that magic or silent E. I call it final. Final E, which is silent, which is like in the word we just did, cake. That's silent. Whenever you have a silent E, it makes the vowel that is right before that consonant long, or say its name. So the marking for final E is just that. Draw a line through it. You know that whenever we draw a line through one of our letters or symbols or graphemes, it means you don't hear it. It's silent. All right? The sixth type of syllable is the vowel team. Remember, we went through these, and that's where you have two vowels together. Remember, it started, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll write those quickly for you. You transpose them again on your sheet. It starts with EY. It's the long E. Remember, this is the rule where two vowels are together. 90% of the time, the first one says its name. But there are times, that's why our language is difficult to learn, because there are always exceptions to the rules. So when we teach adults, we always start with the most common use, the most frequently used form of a phonemic skill. Start there. So EY is the first one. Next one is OE and IE. It's not the next one. Yeah, OE is at the end, like in toe. Next one is AY, sounds like A. OW, and EA. And then the last one is IE, AI, OA, and EE. Remember when we're marking these, remember this is a type of a syllable. We're up to the 6th type. There are 7 total different types of a syllable. A vowel team, when you mark it, like we've got short vowel, long vowel, schwa, R-controlled, silent E, a vowel team is simply going to be underlined like this, and then you mark on the top which vowel carries the sound, like in the word toe. So you'd mark the long O. That's where the long sound is carried, okay? The last type of syllable that we have is what we call, remember that diphthong. And I'm not going to list all these for you because you've already got it, but the diacritical mark for diphthong is that. Here's a couple of them, like OI. Again, they are 2 vowels together. They don't. The first one doesn't necessarily make the long sound. That would make it a vowel team. There's a difference between a vowel team and a diphthong. A diphthong has its own kind of unique sound. A-U, as in taught, aw. So it's not long A. It's a combination. These 2 work together to put out one sound. All right, so we use the diacritical mark of just kind of a long sphere that lets you know that's a diphthong. So quickly, and then I'll get this off so we can work. In syllabication, there are 7 types of syllables. First type is closed. It's closed in by a consonant, makes it short. Second time is open. It's hanging out there by itself, makes it long. It meaning the vowel. The other one is the consonant LE, which we call that schwa. The letter isn't there, but the sound exists, and it's like an sound. The fourth kind is what we call the R-controlled. Anytime you have a vowel that hangs out with an R, you're slightly going to hear that R, but the sound is really going to be controlled by the R. There'll be more of an R sound. That's the diacritical mark for an R-controlled. The fifth one is what we call silent final E. That's why I draw a line through it. It makes the vowel in front of it long. So remember our definition of what a syllable is. It has to have a vowel that you hear. So every time you see a word that's got a silent E on it, that doesn't mean there's 2 parts to this. Like this is a part and this is a part. You have to hear the vowel in order for it to have enough weight to carry the definition of what a syllable is, a part of a word or a word itself. The 6th type is that vowel team. Easy as 1, 2, 3, 4. Generally speaking, in a vowel team, 2 vowels work together. First one generally says a long sound. And the last category is what we call a diphthong. That's the diacritical mark for it. And it's 2 vowels working together, creating its own combined sound. Kind of like when we talked about the blends, when there are 2 consonants that are together, whether it's the beginning of the word or the end of the word, that kind of blend together, like BL and TL, that produce a blended sound. That's what the diphthong does. Okay? All right, I'm going to clear this off because the next thing we're going to do, keep your 7 out, because the next thing we're going to do is talk about how you cut a word in pieces. Okay? How you cut a word in pieces. So let's take, for example, the word. I'll spell the word out. You put the word on your sheet of paper. First word is traffic. Okay? That's this type. All right? It's what we call a vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. 90% of the time, if I give you a solid cut line, that's where you divide the word into its parts or into its syllables. Each part has to have a vowel that you can hear. So let's give you some of the steps for doing that. First thing I'm going to, if I don't know this word, if you have a client that does not know this word, this is how you're going to introduce the word to that client. On the other half of that, if you have a client that comes in and you're reading a text, like maybe you're doing one on all the stop signs, and he says right off the bat, or she says right off the bat, traffic, you don't have to worry about it. They've got the word. If they have the word, that's it. That's our primary focus in our instruction, just to make sure they have the word. I don't care how they got it. They may have it from old memory. They may have it by seeing it in the newspaper. They may have it because they visually remember it. As long as they have it and it's part of their retrieval system, they can get it back whenever they need it. You don't have to worry about teaching him what we're going through now, all right? If they're kids in school, though, in 3rd and 4th grade, I'm teaching them the rules because I want it to go into their brain and be there when they're adults after they leave school, and they will just automatically remember, how do I figure this out? Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to underline the vowels, all right? I'm going to underline those vowels. Okay, I've got 2 vowels. The reason I do that is I want to see how many parts I might have. All right, the next thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to pull down the consonants. I'm not writing the letter of the consonant, but there, I've got 2 consonants, right? So our first pattern means most times you divide the word just like that, between the 2 consonants. That's the first couple of steps. First step, you mark the vowels, underline them, mark them with the V. So there's my vowels. Then you pull down, see how many consonants between those vowels. The reason I'm doing this, again, is to find out how many parts I might have. Then my next step is decide, so here's part 1, here's part 2. Now I got to decide what kind of syllable that is. Once I figure out what kind of syllable it is, I know how the vowel is pronounced, I can put it together, I get a word. All right, so I'm going to look at this one. You look at your list of 7 types. This word to me, I'm going to give you the answers, but I want you to be thinking about it at the same time. This syllable to me looks like it's what? It's closed in by a consonant. So if I have a closed syllable, what does that vowel sound like? You're right. It's a short vowel. So that part of the word is called traff. If I have to sound it out, it's traff. All right, let's look at the second part of this word. I've got a syllable because I've got a vowel that I can hear, all right? And again, it looks like, to me, it's closed in, right, by another consonant. If I have a syllable that's closed in, that vowel is going to be what? You're right. It's going to be short. Mark it. When I say mark it, now is when you need to put your diacritical marks there. Why? Because then that is another method of telling you how I'm going to pronounce those 2 vowels. You know all the short vowels now. Your clients know all the short vowels. Now they know what kind of syllable or part of a word it fits in. Got 2 parts to this word because I have 2 vowels that I can hear, and now I have the pattern. It's vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. 90% of the time, you divide those words between the 2 consonants. I figure out my 2 parts, I figure out the type of syllable it is, and that tells me how to pronounce the vowel. Got it? Good. So that's the first pattern. That's what we call the first kind of pattern that we have. That takes care of this one. The second pattern we have is vowel, consonant, vowel. Now watch what I'm going to do. This means I don't know yet. I got to try it both ways. It can go both ways. So take the word cabin. Or I shouldn't even tell you how to pronounce it. Just act as if you don't know what this word is, okay? And we're going to see how it goes. And let's take the word and let's see what happens. So the first word we have is this word. So my first step, right, underline the vowels, mark it with a V. All right, how many consonants? I'm going to pull down the consonants between. This time I've got 1. Most times, it's divided after the vowel. We're working on the second type of what we call cutting pattern in syllabication, which is vowel, consonant, vowel. So I took the word, this word. I'm not going to say the word out loud as if we don't know what this word is. And remember, our first step was to underline each talking vowel, each vowel that we can hear, mark it, and then put between those 2 vowels how many consonants we have. So I've already got my pattern. Here's the pattern, vowel, consonant, vowel. And I know that it can go either before the consonant or after the consonant, which is why I have a dotted line. So what we have to do now, we know we've got two parts because we have two vowels that I can hear. I need to go back to my 7, figure out what kind of vowel this is, because then that tells me how to pronounce it. I mean, what kind of syllable. So if this was a syllable that doesn't have a consonant, that leaves it right here, that's what we would call an open. And when you have an open syllable, that vowel would be long. So that would be K. And this would be short because it's consonant, vowel, consonant. That's closed in. So the word would be K-bin. I don't know the word K-bin, so that's not working for me. That's why I was trying it out. So I'm going to get rid of, excuse me, this dotted line, and I'm going to try the second way. And a lot of times in our language, you have to do that. We do it visually. When I start to work with adults, we do it paper pencil and even color coding it. Once that gets embedded, you simply do it visually, or it's brain-based. So let's take a look at the second way that you can divide, the second type of the pattern. So now I'm going to look at, still have two syllables. First one now is consonant, vowel, consonant, so it's now a closed, which means this is short. Again, this is closed in by a consonant. That's short. Short A is A, short I is is, so the word is cabin. There's my word, cabin. The last step is to blend these two parts together to produce and pronounce the word. So the word is cabin. So what I'll then do when I finally finish it is make this a solid line because I've made the decision on where I'm going to divide, what pattern I'm going to use for dividing this word into its parts or its syllables. All right? That's the second cutting pattern. The third cutting pattern is vowel, consonant, 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 vowel. So let's take this word. The word is, I'm not going to say it. And let's look at what we've got. So I'm going to underline. Here's a vowel. Here's a vowel. Okay, I'm going to mark it. Mark it. No silent E's, so I know these are probably vowels that I can hear. Now I'm going to see how many consonants I have between those two vowels. Consonant, consonant, consonant. All right, so I've got vowel, consonant, 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 vowel. And generally speaking, 90% of the time, that's where you divide the word. So let's take a look at now. I've got, again, two syllables. I want to look at what type of syllable this is. Look, closed in with a consonant means it's short. Closed in again with consonants, so it's short. So I know both these syllables are closed syllables. Short vowels tells me how to pronounce it. That's a subtract. Subtract is the word. The last thing you do is blend those two parts together and you get the word. One nice thing to remember about vowel, consonant, 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 vowel is that you can see that's almost like a prefix. So when you have prefixes and suffixes, know that they are parts of a word because there's a talking vowel in there or a vowel that you can hear. That's the cutting pattern. Generally speaking, when you have a prefix. Okay? So that's the third type we have. Here comes the fourth type. Vowel, consonant, 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 vowel. So that's 4 consonants between the vowels. Let's take a look at the word. And the word, a word. And let's work it out, okay? I'm going to underline, mark it, underline, mark it, and let's see what's coming down. Consonant, 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 consonant. Again, 90% of the time, that's where you're going to divide it. And again, if you remember when we were talking about phonology, you should recognize by now, you and your client should recognize by now that that's what we call a 3-letter blend. Okay, STR, struck, goes together. This is also, could be a prefix. Okay, now let's figure out each part and how they're going to sound. This is a right? Closed vowel, so that's short. Again, closed vowel, short, so the word is instruct. So once our clients have learned things like blends, the types of syllables that we have that tells us what they sound like, you're going to see that teaching vocabulary, or what we call multisyllabic words, once they learn these cutting patterns, it becomes kind of easy and actually is kind of fun. And I use, whether it's a whiteboard so we can erase, and I use color code. It could be colored pencils or it could be markers like we're using here. Okay, the very last one we've got is called vowel vowel. So let's take the word, okay? Underline the vowels that you hear. You should recognize now that's what we call what? You're right, it's a vowel team. So you have to underline both of them. They constitute one sound. All right, and here's our second one. Okay, so I've got two parts to this word. Now I need to decide where I'm going to cut it. Wherever you've got a vowel team and another vowel, 90% of the time it's cut right between the vowels. So I know that this is a vowel team type of syllable, okay? It's the type of the syllable. So I have to go back and either think in my mind or pull my sheet out to see what AY is going to sound like. Generally speaking, in a vowel team, what happens? The first one says its name. So that would be, here's a blend, CR, cray, closed vowel, right? Short, cray, on, crayon. The last thing you do, blend the two together, and we get a word. All right? So we have done syllabication. To review quickly, there are seven types of syllables. Those syllables each tell you how the vowel is going to sound. All right? There are 5 cutting patterns, or 5 ways that you cut parts or syllables in words. When you were in kindergarten or first grade, you kind of learned crayon. You tapped on the table, you clapped your hands, you taught your ear to hear it. Now with adults, we need to teach them the 7 types of syllables so that they know what this sound's going to be. They recognize that that's a vowel team. Last thing I want you to do is, you've got 2 or 3 pages in your handout that has some list of words that has each type of syllable. I want you to practice on those now.